Doug Jones, Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate in Alabama, takes a selfie with a supporter during a campaign event in Birmingham. Justin Sullivan. Images. This article is part of the Opinion Today newsletter. You can sign up here to receive the newsletter each weekday. On Election Day last year, I devoted my column to this country's real voter fraud, not the vanishingly small number of people who try to vote illegally, but the large number of American citizens who are kept from exercising their most basic democratic right. The problem is serious in Alabama, the site of today's special Senate election between the Republican Roy Moore and the Democrat Doug Jones. Thousands of Alabama residents are prohibited from voting or face unfair obstacles, and a disproportionate number of them are black. Few elections are close enough for voting obstacles to be decisive, but the Alabama Senate race may be one of them. Polls continue to differ widely, largely because it's unusual, featuring one candidate, Moore, who's a proud bigot, an alleged molester, and the nominee of the state's dominant political party. Before the results of the Alabama race are known, I encourage you to think about voting barriers in the state. Regardless of the outcome, the obstacles to democracy in Alabama are an injustice. After a Supreme Court decision weakening the Voting Rights Act, Alabama passed a strict voter identification law, notes Slate's Jamel Bowie. The law at one point led to the closing of the offices that issue driver's licenses in every county where more than 75% of registered voters were black. Driver's licenses are, of course, the main form of voter identification. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote that 2013 opinion, and Tom Perriello, the Democratic activist, wrote yesterday on Twitter, "I imagine Justice Roberts is appalled by Roy Moore, but he may well have cast the most important vote to get to him elected." The new AL voter suppression laws are a direct result of his decision to gut the VRA and perhaps pave Moore's path to the Senate. An academic study suggests that the laws implemented since the Supreme Court decision have already reduced voter turnout in racially diverse parts of Alabama. Scott Douglas, the executive director of Greater Birmingham Ministries, explains in a Times Opt. Alabama also denies the vote to many people previously convicted of felonies, although the state has at least made progress on this issue. In The Atlantic, Van R. Newkirk too puts the voting obstacles into a historical perspective. Voting has always been burdensome for black people in Alabama, he writes. Newkirk adds, early voting, which has been a key factor for other states in increasing black turnout, is not permitted in Alabama. The state also doesn't have no-fault absentee voting, pre-registration for teens, or same-day registration. In all, it's harder to vote in Alabama than just about anywhere else, a dynamic that should tend toward cooling the turnout of people who've only been allowed to vote in the state for 50 years. Terrorism. Unsuccessful attack in New York yesterday is further evidence that American counterterrorism efforts are working. Josh Barrow of Business Insider writes, "Our government has disrupted and infiltrated terror networks that would seek to plan attacks in the United States. Would-be terrorists have been left to work alone or, occasionally, with close relatives they can trust not to be FBI informants." The GOP tax plan. Axios had the most succinct summary of the day's events. The Treasury finally released its analysis of the tax plan today. It's one page long and acknowledges that the plan will not pay for itself. Gene Sahadi of CNN Money explained, Treasury issues spare one-page memo claiming, "Woe showing real analysis, that GOP tax plan can pay for itself." Experts call it a thorough effort, not one that could withstand peer review, and Jennifer Rubin of The Washington Post thinks that Senator Susan Collins, the main Republican, is fooling herself if she believes her proposed fixes to the tax plan will really undo the damage it would cause healthcare. My column yesterday focused on the way Collins is supporting a policy that will ultimately lead to Medicare cuts. Rubin emphasizes a different problem: the way the tax plan will hurt health insurance markets in the short term. The full opinion report from The Times follows.